This video is a continuation of the string notebook and will describe string concatenation and immutability. In Python, we can use the plus operator to concatenate strings. For instance, I can write hello plus a string containing a space plus a string containing the word Python plus another string with the exclamation point. And when I run this block, Python will concatenate all of these separate strings into a single string saying hello Python. And of course, if we were to store any number of these in variables, this would still work as we would expect. Now, it turns out that if we have string literals like this that appear on the same line next to each other, we don't necessarily have to use the plus operator to concatenate them. In this case, the interpreter will automatically concatenate these strings for us. This doesn't work with variables, but only with hard-coded literals like we see here. Variables actually require the use of the plus operator. If you use parentheses, then you can concatenate multiple string literals even if they span multiple lines. In addition to the plus operator, we can also use the asterisk or multiplication operator to repeat strings. If we were to write hello times 3, this would effectively repeat the string hello 3 times. And of course, this works with string literals as well. Okay, now I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about mutability and immutability, and specifically how that concept relates to strings. Strings are immutable objects in Python, and this means strings cannot be changed. The word mutable means can be or liable to be changed, while immutable is the opposite. So let's look at an example to see what I mean by this. I'm going to create a string, immutable, and I'm going to bind it to the variable myString. Now we saw in a previous section that we can index a string using square brackets. So myString at 0 accesses the first character in the string. It turns out that for mutable objects, you can also use indexing to modify or change the indexed elements. However, since strings are immutable, if we attempt to do this, for instance, if I want to replace the capital I in immutable with a lowercase I, this does not work. And in fact, we get a type error saying that the string object does not support item assignment, and that's because the strings are immutable, meaning they cannot be changed. In the previous sections on indexing and slicing, we were able to get one or more characters from our string and return it as another string. And the reason that works is that when you need a string in Python, Python will actually create a new one for you. So when we index or slice, we're not simply accessing the characters from those strings, we're actually creating new strings that contain copies of those characters. So in this case, if our goal is to replace the capital I with a lowercase I, how do I do that? And it turns out the answer to that is much the same as we just said. We have to create a new string. So one way to do that is use a combination of the things we've just seen, concatenation and slicing. I can create a new string containing the lowercase I, and I can concatenate that with the plus operator to a slice of my string that contains all characters but the first. And you'll see that Python produces a new string for us with a lowercase I as the first character. Now, doing this in a manual fashion like this is, of course, tedious, and you wouldn't do this in practice. Instead, if you wish to have all lowercase characters in your string, there is a string.lower method that you can call. And so if I type myString.lower, where lower is the method, you'll see that it returns a new string containing only lowercase characters. And here is a link to the Python documentation for string lower. And this page actually contains a number of other methods or functions that act on strings. And in later sections, we'll describe more about the syntax you're seeing here, and we'll talk even more about what functions do and even what objects are in Python.